Okay, we have received an amendment from Councillor Gillen, seconded by Councillor Watson, and Councillor Gillen has the right to talk to his amendment, and so I'll call upon you now, Councillor Gillen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, we've heard today that there are no legal issues with what's in front of us, but I am still very, very concerned about the consultation process and various aspects. So I've put forward an amendment that goes through a number of these, and so I'll go through that. But just before I do, I just want to say that if the governing body, I believe the governing body last term erred in its decision when it did not include Speedway as an option in the consultation. Because if it had done so, we could have avoided the quagmire of issues that we're currently dealing with. The other thing that I think shouldn't have happened is, and as I raised it before in the question time, I think that TAU was out of order making a decision to develop a new option without first coming back to the governing body. So my amendment today, Mr. Mayor, is essentially to go back out for consultation, but I'll just take you through the reasons why. So first of all, an A is to receive the public feedback, noting that option 1 for the Auckland Arena was supported by 21% of submitters, option 2 for the Western Springs Bowl supported by 30% of submitters, option 3A to keep things as they are supported by 16% of submitters, and option 3B to explore other ideas supported by 33% of submitters. And noting in B that 14,894 submissions were received on the future use of Western Springs Stadium, and that is a higher number than we receive on most consultations, including the recent Plan Change 120 consultation, which is at 10,500. So this is a very significant and important decision, one that Aucklanders care passionately about. In C, express concern, the consultation process and the conclusions drawn by the Council on the future use of Western Springs Stadium are potentially unsound and risk reputational damage to Auckland Council if used as the basis for the decision due to the following. First, consultation was undertaken without a clear option to include Speedway, despite it being a significant and well-supported activity at the stadium for the last 96 years. Due to not being provided their preferred option, supporters of Speedway appear to have split their responses between option 3A, to keep it as things as they are, which received 16%, and option 3B, explore other ideas, which received 33%, which was the highest supported option. Options 3A and 3B total 49% of responses. It says in the report that around 30% of all submissions made actual comments relating to keeping Speedway, but really anywhere up until 49% could be supporting Speedway. The second reason is proponents of option 1, Auckland Arena, withdrew their proposal at the end of the consultation, effectively rendering redundant the 21% of responses in favour of that option, and we don't know what their second preference was. The third reason is the description of option 3A stated that Auckland Council and TAU are also open to other ideas. This consultation provides an opportunity for the public to suggest alternative ideas for the venue. These could be explored if the Council does not decide to proceed with option 1 or 2. If you'd like to suggest alternative uses for the venue, please include this in your feedback. And yet the governing body members have not been provided with any assessment of all the ideas that were presented under option 3B, so we don't know what the alternatives that the public put forward are. The fourth reason is that the public have not provided feedback on the revised option 2, which is the one that TAU are now recommending, as it is substantially different from the option 2 that went out for consultation. And here are some of the differences. The revised option proposes that TAU operate the stadium, which is materially different to the consulted option, which was to provide a 30-year lease to a concert provider and a Ponsonby Rugby Club. The second one, the revised option proposes accommodating events of 15,000 to 30,000, which is half the 50,000 capacity figure that was used in the consultation material. Thirdly, the role of Ponsonby Rugby Club is scaled back from being involved in a 30-year lease to a 5-year extension of lease, subject to redevelopment clause that allows for a 2-year termination notice, so it could actually only be there for 2 years. And the emphasis on community use and access, which was all through the description of the option 2 in the consultation, the emphasis on community use and access has been removed, with the provision of community hub, club rooms, upgrades of outer sports fields, etc., no longer part of the proposal, and instead are unfunded future options. Also, an unsolicited bid from Western Springs Speedway Association was declined due to being received after the EOI deadline, which it was, yet the revised option 2 from TAU was proposed after the EOI deadline as well. Then D, express concern that a decision is being recommended on the future of Western Springs Stadium when Auckland Council is scheduled to face judicial review proceedings in the High Court in July of this year in respect to Council's decision-making process related to Speedway, and we heard about that earlier today. So, Mr Mayor, I'm recommending that the governing body therefore direct staff to prepare a new public consultation on the future use of Western Springs Stadium, including the following options. 1, the revised option 2, as recommended by TAU, because the public haven't had a chance to comment on that yet. And also an option that enables the return of Speedway to Western Springs Stadium in conjunction with Ponsonby Rugby concerts and events. And that the consultation must take into account changed circumstances that affect Western Springs Stadium and the content at the stadium, including but not limited to the Eden Park 2.1 redevelopment supported by Auckland Council, increases in concert content at Eden Park about to come to effect, and flood-prone considerations affecting Western Springs Stadium. So thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to also say that this vote could be a division, please. Thank you. I was just calling on a division when it comes up, please.
Okay, speaking to this. Okay, we'll put it to, pay attention. Councillor Watson is the seconder and then Councillor Turner. Okay.
Thank you. I think it's appropriate now to say what I intended to say because hopefully this goes through. I want to say this issue is not just about Speedway, about Western Springs anymore. It's not about Speedway, just about Speedway anymore. It's also about council. It's about us. Yep. We spend an inordinate amount of time and effort building relationships with our communities, upholding and strengthening our reputational integrity, and fostering trust in the execution of council's decision-making processes. Personally, I have found this process rushed and unfinished. I understand the value of a fast-track approach, which is what this issue has felt like to me since the beginning, when an unexpected opportunity presents itself. I do not dispute the advantages widely touted as delivered by a free $200 million stadium, but the disadvantages were less spoken of. I don't accept that due diligence and clear process should suffer to expedite an opportunity, and I feel it has. But that first offer, option 1, was withdrawn. This was not just the loss of 1 out of 4 choices, really 1 out of 3. TAU and Auckland Council clearly and concisely stated in its consultation process that this was their preferred option, making it central to the consultation process. The loss of which is a significant and substantial reduction in the validity of the consultation, and I believe was more than enough justification to start the process again at that point, which is what we're kind of asking for here. But we didn't do that. Instead, we chose what on the surface was the next most popular option. But then TAU identified this option, option 2, was financially unworkable. So we, and I say we because we're all in this together, so TAU then workshopped with the EOI, with other EIO applicants for, and we heard this morning, months and months and months, and TAU formulated a proposal that TAU believed works for them, all while refusing to entertain, excuse the pun, the approach from consecutive approaches from Western Springs Speedway Association, despite acknowledging in writing that the second and later unsolicited proposal from the association met the scope of the procurement process. When I questioned why that is at our last workshop, TAU said that the application had been presented to Auckland Council, not themselves, the inference being that a wrong process had been followed. I believe that this is about being seen to be there with our community, in lockstep with our community for the best outcomes for everybody. I don't think we've demonstrated that by keeping them out of the debate, and I beg with you all to support this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Watson, please.
Thanks. I guess you'd find it hard to believe that we're sitting here with an offer that's on the table, or at least up for consideration, that would deliver $10 to $12 million of private investment, would construct a new health fitness centre, 25-metre pool, club rooms for Ponsonby Rugby, cafe, museum, that would, most importantly, retain all three user groups, Ponsonby Rugby, concerts and events, and Speedway, and which would be a model that would deliver a far better return on investment than music promoters who are not going to put anything in, no money getting put in. Ponsonby Rugby's not putting any money in. The ratepayers are going to be putting money in. So it's almost inconceivable, particularly given almost the obsession with with finances in this matter over the last little while, that such a proposal hasn't even been given any consideration, or in fact it's been quite deliberately sidelined. That's the first point I'd make. The second point I'd make, it's also equally inconceivable that elected members could be sitting around the chamber listening to the quite disturbing testimony from the 5 racing clubs that make up Western Springs Open Wheel Racing. Almost to a person, they talked about the dramatic decline in competitor numbers, the cycle of declining participation and declining patronage with fewer spectators, how a once thriving motorsport is now being fractured, talk about the track surface, the new seating, the inadequacies, and that are fundamental barriers to running a safe, successful speedway program. And they finished by saying open wheel racing has survived in Auckland for nearly a century, yet in just one season at Waikaraka Park, the sport has been pushed to the brink. If the current arrangement continues for another season, we believe open wheel racing will disappear from Auckland entirely. And that's really what's at stake today, ladies and gentlemen. As much as we can hear platitudes and homilies from those outside of the sport, those 5 groups are the people we should be listening to. And the difference is now, last year it was hypothetical. We're getting told how well it was going to work, how things were going to be better. This year we've found out, actually, this is what's happened. There is no money to make it anymore. The 11 million's gone. It would take at least 40, 50 million to fix it up. And even with that, it's clear that it would be inferior to Western Springs. I'm not quite sure what the Western Springs people have to do. They've engaged in the consultation in good faith. They've easily dominated the public feedback on that. Well over 40% of people said they wanted Speedway to retain. Yet it's very clear that was never given any consideration at all. Is that fair? Is that what you come into council for? To completely dismiss a section of our community who have not been listened to at all? We told them, yes, listen to the consultation process, you'll have your opportunity to have your say there. They had their say and they've been ignored in their entirety. I guess what makes it particularly galling for me, and perhaps some other councillors who've been around here a while, is the track record of the stadiums in Auckland. It has been abysmal. It's gone from looking to turn Western Springs into a cricket stadium while simultaneously understating the cost by 900%. It's gone to considering demolishing part of Mount Smart to, ironically enough, to host speedway racing. It has demolished part of North Harbour Stadium with catastrophic results for that stadium, and which have not yet been restored, to host a failed baseball franchise that was gone in a couple of years. Now we're back at Western Springs. And I guess the thing that sticks in my mind, over the years, there was just a few councillors who said no. that doesn't make sense to demolish Mount Smart, now our best used stadium. Last year, at least there was a majority of people said, well, actually, that's not a good thing for the North Shore to demolish and sell off the land at North Harbour. But today, it's even worse because it's not theoretical. We've heard that it has failed and failed miserably. So there's no rose-tinted glasses here. It has not worked. So I guess when you look at these people here today who have stayed to 3 o'clock, endured all this time, what do you say to them? They know what's coming. They've told us what's coming. And I guess the big question is whether we take any heed of that or not. Councillor Gillen's amendment provides the opportunity not to dismiss what Tātaki have put on the table, to put that out in good faith, along with this other proposal that has private investment, that accommodates all three codes, and potentially produces a valuable community facility on top of that. Why wouldn't you go out with that, particularly when you know there's judicial review proceedings? And if you listen to the lawyer, they're not without a bit of ammunition. So I just conclude by saying this is a good amendment. It does allow both options to stay on the table, and more importantly, it's responding to the reasonable demands of our community, because these people come from all over Auckland.
Councillor Sayers, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've entered today with an open mind. Perhaps one of the things that I found, they had to give a lot of thought to was the answer from the Chief Executive of Tātaki Unlimited today when he admitted that he hadn't read the latest Speedway Association proposal. That concerned me because I had read it, and it's new to the table. I think just as it's been outlined, what I'm reading in that proposal is there's a new facility for Ponsonby Rugby, there's a conference cafe, there's a 25-metre pool for the community centres, cafes, gyms, rugby, concerts, speedway, childcare centre, etc. Multiple tenancies, reducing the risks to Auckland ratepayers, not only reducing the risk by having spread tenancies, but also all that investment not being paid by the ratepayer. I find that extremely important that we need to consider that around this table. Tātaki Unlimited hasn't had that opportunity, and neither have we, and we probably should. So the return on investment to ratepayers needs to be considered in every scenario that's presented to us. And I think there's one here that is extremely important, and we haven't had the time to digest to our best ability. And we take an oath when we take this office to do it the very best we can. And in this case, in all good consciousness, I don't believe that I have considered that, and I don't believe the governing body has had the opportunity, let alone Tātaki Limited, to digest the latest proposal. One that's, on the surface of it, looks like the best deal that we probably had, perhaps after the football proposal, in terms of private investment. So it's with, I have to vote with my heart on this. I have to go with what I believe is the right thing. And I believe the right thing is to get that proposal in front of us for each and every one of us to consider against the other options. And at the moment, we haven't got that in front of us. I see this amendment as the only proposal today as a mechanism to actually do that. So, yeah, I'm just going to have to go with my conscience and make a conscious vote on this. And at the moment, I'm supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Lee, please.
Thank you. There was a great deal of dismay last week when the Acumen Idleman Trust barometer of public confidence in government was released, and the results were that public confidence of government is at 49%. That's the national government, the parliamentary government, national with a small n. But here in Auckland, we have our own quality of life surveys. Citizens Insight Monitor, CIM. And the latest figures for that are actually, in terms of trust in local government, are at 27%. Confidence that Auckland Council makes decisions in the best interests of Auckland, 29%, and belief that public has influence over decisions, 34%. That's pretty awful, given we consider ourselves, and we should be, and have been, a democratic society. Interestingly enough, those figures seem to straddle the 29.4% of Auckland's qualified Aucklanders who bothered to cast a vote at the last election. This Speedway affair has not helped the image of Auckland Council, nor confidence, nor trust. That is quite clear. I think the obligation on us is to try and address that. It's a question of what is right, what is wrong, a question of what is democratic, and a question essentially of honour. Now, I'm not going to get into the details of process that have been addressed and during the questioning, but I was struck by the admonition of the Court of Appeal to our colleagues in the Wellington City Council when they talked about unlawful funneling of choices. And this goes back to the Local Government Act, Section 77, and Councillor Sayers has reminded us that we swear a solemn oath before our election becomes official, before we have a warrant of office. We swear that oath, and a key part of it is to uphold our obligations under the Local Government Act. These are mandatory obligations. It should be taken seriously. In terms of the last public consultation, 6 months after the decision to evict Speedway, it brings to mind what would we think of a country that called an election 6 months prior to that, that country had permanently exiled the most popular candidate. Would we think that country was really democratic or just going through the motions? The other concern I have with the last consultation was that we actually voted for 3 options. Unfortunately, we couldn't get support for an explicit Speedway option, but we did authorise 3 options, and what went out to the public was 4 options, and some might suggest that was in effect vote splitting, and so it turned out to be. So my plea to my colleagues here today, and you, Mr Mayor, is get behind this amendment proposed by Councillor Gillen, which is thoughtful and robust and pretty hard to argue against in terms of honesty, in terms of justice, in terms of fairness, and in terms of democracy. So I'll be voting for it, and I make a heartfelt plea to colleagues around the table to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Winiata, please.
Yes, thank you. I'm not sure if I'll have get a chance to speak in terms of the debate, so I'll take the opportunity now. It was mentioned by staff, we risk council's reputation if we go through the process again. That's a hard one to swallow. Firstly, we aren't even a consideration on some sporting event calendars because you have to deal with multiple different staff within council to try and get an event organised. So they just go ahead and look to work with the Hamilton District Council, the Rotorua District Council, because they have one person to go to and it's much easier. So we miss out on events just because our process inhibits being able to make things easy for our community. Secondly, when you've got a football club turn up on Saturday to a council-owned changing rooms and there's no hot water cylinder for the first home game of the season, and council have known about this since November last year and it hasn't been replaced, it does raise a few eyebrows around council's reputation in terms of how it treats its clubs. We have already risked our reputation with the public, and we're regularly letting them down and being let down by council departments. And thirdly, I guess the perceived changing of the goalposts by introducing an altered option 2 is hugely detrimental to the perception of the council to the public. Contrary to that, when there is a private plan that's put forward by an entity to go into a park, a community facility with a pool, and so on, consequential OPEX is something that weighs in on any new facility. When you start talking about pools, I know that the Manarewa community pool at the Pool and Leisure Centre down there, that costs in excess of around $1.8 million a year to run. I don't know how a community facility can get constructed and be able to operate for the community without providing an extensive user pays model, which may be detrimental to some of the community that wish to enjoy those facilities, but the barrier is the cost to get through. And that's the same with the facility if we're looking at it in general. If it does fail, who's going to be the end user of that? It's going to have to be brought into council. I look at a number of buildings around the Weymouth Peninsula, and if I know anything, they're empty now and becoming dilapidated because things do come to an end, and everybody looks to council as the big brother to hand out the money or as the bank of mum and dad, so to speak. And without the right plan moving ahead, it is really hard to consider these options. I don't know if a funding plan has been provided with the model that was put forward around the community centre, because it's not just to get it constructed, it's what are we expected to look at in terms of maintenance costs over the next 10 years, because at some stage someone's going to have to take that into account, and those are very hard questions for us to ask our ratepayers to have to shoulder in the coming years if the assistance is needed. And we're already seeing with Waikaraka Park that the initial $11 million investment has fallen short and it will need extra help. I understand that there's a very passionate group of race car fans that are here. I have enjoyed many nights at Western Springs as I have at Waikaraka Park, and I understand that sometimes through my football career I didn't care where I was playing, I just wanted grass to play on. So I understand that drivers also just want to get out and drive, and they're being frustrated because of the lack of dirt or quality of dirt at Waikaraka Park and the constant delays. So the intention for council to get that right and failing there was quite frustrating. So if we look at previously the option 2 on the former amendment, we do have to consider that it may have its hiccups, but we also have to decide whether or not we're moving forward for the best interests of the city as a whole, or looking at hanging on to something which may continue to prove a little bit more of an anchor than the residents and the region might otherwise like. Those are my points, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Williamson, please.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's appropriate, but I wouldn't mind getting a couple of answers from the mover of the amendment about timeframes. One of the things that I'm just myopically focused on is money and wasting money, and one day there were going to be some management textbooks written with a how not to do something, and this will be used as the example of the appalling process we've gone through over and over and over again. So I'm really reluctant to vote for the amendment, because I'm just about at my bloody wit's end about this thing going on and on and on for more. What sort of time frame did you envisage this whole consultation and coming back to us again would be, Councillor Gillen? Are you thinking about a year?
That's a hard one with the way that council operates, but probably up to a year.
Yeah.
I mean, to be done properly.
And in which case we lose a big chunk of revenue from what Tautaki are proposing for that year, right? Is that right? Am I mistaken on that? Okay. So, yeah. Okay, well, okay, that's all I want to ask. I'm not sure which bloody way I'll vote on this now.
Well, that's clear. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Your Worship. I am going to support the amendment because I am not sufficiently persuaded that the process has been sufficiently robust. There has been problem and confusion that we have heard about ad nauseum today. We're all here in the best interest of Auckland, and after all, the two drivers for amalgamation, I think, were transport and stadia. And I'm not persuaded that we're doing justice to what that responsibility that we have. But I want to keep my comments short because I think it's all been said, but I will be supporting the amendment, and I thank my colleagues for doing an enormous amount of research on this, and Councillor Gillen for bringing forward the amendment.
Deputy Mayor, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just on the money, Morris, I've just checked. Staff say it will cost about 62k for consultation. We would lose 750k plus 1.1 million in revenue.
Oh, wonderful. Quick. Rightio, I've got no speakers. We've been called for a vote on this thing. It'd be nice to get on and do something. The division was called by somebody or other.
Okay, councillors, we are going to vote on Councillor Gillen's amendment, seconded by Councillor Watson. We're doing that via resolve, and we will start the vote now. Thank you, councillors. We have everybody's vote. The amendment has lost 6 votes to 15.
Thank you. Righto, we'll now go back to the original offer up there, and that's been debated to hell. I think we might as well vote on that too. Okay. Does anyone want to do that by division?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, we're going to vote on the original, which is up there now, which is extended. We have an F in there as well, so please send that round for voting, please.
Okay, councillors, we are now voting on the original motion. We'll start the vote now. Thank you, councillors. That's the vote completed. We do have votes from His Worship and Councillor Newman. As you can see, that vote is carried 15 votes to 6.